we put these uniforms on, but under those uniforms, we're people. And we love, and we have fears, and we're afraid of things. And sometimes we just need someone to hold that space and hear it and affirm who we are.
Welcome to the Tango Tango podcast. Real, raw, and unfiltered conversations with veterans and those who support them. Tune in, be inspired, and walk away stronger.
Welcome to season 2 of the Tango Tango podcast. I'm super excited that we're in season 2. I'm even more thrilled on my special friend, Dr. Qwynn Galloway-Salazar, joining us today. Welcome, Qwynn.
Good morning, Lloyd. How are you, my friend? Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
I'm doing wonderful because I have you on the show. So Qwynn is, you remember the old beer commercial, the most interesting man in the world? You are the most interesting woman in the world. Presidential scholar, Army veteran. You got a big role in corporate America. You've got the whole doula thing going on, which we're going to talk about. You're into the arts as well. You've done some drama stuff. So I'm really pumped to get to know you a little more, although we spent some good quality time together this year, which we're going to talk about. Yeah. But I'm pumped not only for my listeners and viewers to get to know you, but for me to dig in some details and hear some stories behind all this interest.
Let's
so you ready to get started?
I'm so ready. Let's do it.
So Qwynn, like me, lives in the greater Atlanta area here in the great state of Georgia, but where'd you grow up? Did you grow up from this area?
No, I did not. I am a New Yorker. So I was born and raised in Queens, New York. I moved to Georgia in 2000 for college.
Wow. So Queens, New York. If you know me, I came into the Atlanta area, which is like New York South. And literally it's New York South. And I really didn't have a great friends or anything like that. I actually didn't have a great opinion of New Yorkers. And now I've been here for 19 years. And oh my gosh, some of my greatest friends are from the greater New York area. So
yeah. What a place. What a time to be alive. When I look at time now, I've been in Georgia longer than I was in New York. So I'm kind of dating myself, but I will always be a New Yorker.
You're too kind and nice to be a New Yorker. Holy cow. So do you get back to New York often?
So I try to go home at least once a year. That's about all that my system can handle. Because you're right? Like I've been in the South too long. And when I go home, I'm like, whoa, things are moving too fast. People are moving too fast. People don't just stop and say hello. So, I've grown out of that season and kind of have maneuvered into that Southern way that speak to someone on the street and just ask them how their day is versus being in New York and you speak to someone on the street and they're thinking you're getting ready to mug them. Like that part of my life is so behind me. But
Sarah and I went to New York to see the Rockettes and a couple other Broadway shows about this time last year. And we found ourselves one night in Grand Central Station at midnight, taking the train back to our hotel. And it was sensory overload. Yeah. It was like, oh my gosh, you got this group playing over here, this group here, somebody trying to get you to play cards. Yeah. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this. It's just too much. So I got to ask you, when you get up to New York and you're there for a couple of days, do you pop back in New York mode, or do you stay in?
I do. I do. It's really funny when I even till this day, if I meet someone and they're from like New York City, not like upstate New York, it's like automatic. My accent comes back like I just left New York. But yeah, when I go back home, right, and it's a joy. There's so much rich culture and history and good food and good fashion that home is home. And I do pop back. And then when I come back home, I remember where I am.
So what high school did you graduate from?
Yeah, so I graduated from St. John's Preparatory High School in Astoria, New York. So I went to a Catholic high school.
Okay.
in New York. Yeah. So my education from kindergarten to 12th grade was Catholic school.
Okay. And let's talk about your journey to the Army. How in the world did that happen?
Whoa, my journey into the Army. I think my story starts like many other young folks, right? Having that recruiter sitting outside of your college telling you that you can see the world if you join the military. This was in 2000. I apologize, 2001. So I enlisted into the Army in April of 2001.
Wow, what a year to
What
join
a
the Army.
year to join
Yeah.
the Army. Here's the thing, Lloyd, and once again, I'm dating myself again. The last major conflict was Gulf War. And I was like in the 3rd grade. So I had this thought that I can do my time in the military. I can go to college, get it paid for, and not have a reason to go anywhere or have to leave college, right? I was a reservist, but I was called up shortly after 9/11 in 2003. Now, what's very unique is the fact that I am a New Yorker, and my family was still in New York when the towers came down. And that was a real defining moment. I remember that day. You know how there are events in history? You remember where you were, what you were wearing, who you were with. I was living in Atlanta, and my duffel bags were still packed. I just finished my training for the Army and watched the towers go down on the news. And it changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah. I'm really dating myself. So I was year 14 in the Air Force out of the 20 years. And I was in Germany. So it was at the end of the day and I'm watching it go on TV. So we watched it for about an hour and I was in a special unit that would deploy at a moment's notice. And then after watching it for an hour, our commander sent us all home to go pack our bags. And most of the group were gone 3 days later. So yeah, amazing. Yeah, I have those moments too. One of the big ones for us was Princess Diana dying, and you know that was different, but right up there with the pivotal. Yeah. So you got activated. Talk a little bit about your activation.
So I was activated in January 2003. Our unit we did not deploy, so we backfilled Fort Bragg. And what a time, right? So this was during high deployment times where we were sending soldiers left and right overseas. My MOS was finance. And so, I was in the grunt of it, making sure that soldiers' pays were correct before they left ground. But what was really interesting about that time was I had the opportunity, Lloyd, to get classified in postal work. And I took over the mailroom. And taking over the mailroom, that's where when people start asking, how did you start like this wild career in supporting service members, veterans, and their families? It started there. I cannot tell you the number of soldiers that would come to get their packages and to get their mail that would just sit and talk about the fact that they had babies on the way, talk about the fact that they were in school like I was and got activated, officers who came in and talked about they were afraid of going overseas, afraid for their troops. There was just this thing that I didn't know that I had where people felt comfortable telling me their stories. And this was about a good year that I was in the mailroom just listening to stories day in and day out. And it caused me to see service in a different way. It caused me to see service in a way where we put these uniforms on, but under those uniforms were people. And we love, and we have fears, and we're afraid of things. And sometimes we just need someone to hold that space and hear it and affirm who we are. And at 20, I think it was 21. Oh my gosh, that feels like a lifetime ago. I was like 21 when I was working in the mailroom. And it gave me such a breath of what folks were like underneath their uniform that I went back to school. I finished my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I went back to school and pursued a master's degree in counseling because I wanted to support our service members. And that's what started my journey over 20 years ago.
Yeah, amazing. And if you ever have the privilege and honor of meeting the Qwynn in person, she's absolutely so empathetic and somebody that hears you, which is, I think I figured that out really quick when we met. And then, we have the bond of people. So do you know the motto of the Air Force First Sergeant, which I have my big diamond behind me, is people are our business. And, the coming into UPS after a 20-year career in the Air Force, I was really successful. Part of it was because of my drive and my work ethic, but a big part of it was I was able to find the right people, hire the right people, and put everything I could in mentoring and developing those people. And people are so important. So you spent how many years in the Army?
6.
6 years. And why did you decide to hang it up?
I was a mom. And at the time, I was a single mom.
Okay. Wow.
I was a single mom, and I had to make some really hard decisions, right? I think the military has come a long way. Back then, of course, you had to sign a family care plan and all of those things. And as a single mom, I didn't have the level of support that I needed to have a full-fledged career in the Army. And so I had to make a really tough decision. I had to make the decision to choose my daughter. After an honorable discharge, I still stayed connected. Listen, Lloyd, when I got home from active duty, I took my uniform off. I chucked it to the side. I said, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. This was a season of my life, but I never would have imagined that season of my life would have carried on for decades, right? Outside of uniform, but still serving in the space of supporting the military.
Absolutely. Let's talk. You've had an interesting career path that ended up putting you on a collision path with me, which I think is wonderful.
Yes.
But I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and you are a jail diversion and trauma recovery state project director and consultant in Atlanta. What a big job. And I got to ask you why, why that job? And then what did you learn in that role?
Whoa.
Learn in that role about yourself.
Straight out of grad school, I had Similac still behind my ear. I didn't know what I was signing up to do. All I knew at that time was I was being offered a position to take my criminal justice background and my counseling background and make them intersect. And I was like, sign me up. But here's what I learned. I learned how trauma can impact our veterans in ways that can cause them to interface with the criminal justice system. And if they don't receive the care and the supports that they need, that recidivism rate, that chance for them to spiral into substance abuse, into other forms of violence, just creates this continuum, creates this cycle. So being able to take on that role as jail diversion director, I had the chance to see how veterans entered into the criminal justice system from interfacing with law enforcement. I had the chance to train police officers on how to intervene in crisis, right? So I started training as a crisis intervention trainer, working with law enforcement in the Atlanta area, all the way to go into the jails. What's the intake? Are we asking people, have they served in the armed forces? Not if they're a veteran, but have they served in the armed forces, to figure out what veterans are in our criminal justice system. So I worked from law enforcement all the way to reentry, right? And everything in between. And the courts, training the courts what trauma looks like, how to become trauma informed. educating our judges, educating our attorneys, educating social workers that were embedded in mental health courts and veteran treatment courts on how to support and how to be culturally competent as it relates to caring for veterans in the criminal justice system.
Wow. Wow. That is absolutely amazing. And then I'm just reading some of your roles here. You went on to be a research manager at Emory School of Medicine,
Yep.
Then a state program coordinator for looks like the Georgia National Guard. Let's fast forward to 2017 when you took on the role of treatment court liaison as the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health.
Yeah.
What was that role all about? What did you learn about yourself in that role?
So I took a second stab at working in state government again. And what I learned, it allowed me to go back into the criminal justice system, but from a broader space, right? So that specific role wasn't solely focused on veterans. It was focused on just mental health, substance abuse, just diversion and treatment as a whole for all adult populations. What it taught me, once again, goes back to the time when I was working in the mailroom. People are people, and sometimes they just want to be heard and listened to. And oftentimes there are reasons why people end up in the criminal justice system, in the mental health treatment courts and the substance abuse drug courts, right? There are reasons why. But when we are intentional with the way that we design our programs and the way that we design the care that they can or should receive, they're able to recover. They're able to reunify with their family. They're able to live lives that are free from substance abuse, that are free from crime, that allow them to say, yes, I may have this mental health diagnosis, but I'm not going to let that stigma stay with me, right? And I've learned that. My husband is in law enforcement, and it never fails, Lloyd. We'll go somewhere and something will happen and his officer hat will kick in and my mental health crisis intervention hat will kick in. And we are like this duo team, right? That can just like de-escalate something on a drop of a dime. But it's taught me how to be present with people at their lowest points and not judge and just validate their human experience.
Wow. What a tremendous opportunity. And then your next role, I don't know if you know this about me, but I absolutely love history. Love history. I've got George Washington bobblehead right there. So you got a role. I think this is just fascinating. I want to hear how you got into it and then what the role was all about. You're the co-principal investigator for Brooklyn College Veterans History Project. So tell me all about that. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So there was a season in my life where I wanted to dip my big toe in oral history, specifically on the lives of veterans. And so that's what we did. I helped co-lead a class or two at Brooklyn College virtually during the pandemic and really had the chance to teach students on how to interview veterans. What are some of the questions you want to ask? What are some questions that you shouldn't ask, right? But what stemmed out of that opportunity was to co-author a chapter in a book specifically focused on compassion fatigue, secondary trauma, as it related to caregivers caring for veterans. So my colleague, Dr. Phil Napoli, we co-wrote that chapter, and we really journeyed into what it was like for those caregivers. But what we got out of doing that research and that work was, wow, how the stories both of us and the lived experiences we've heard over the years have shaped and impacted us, and how vicarious trauma and how compassion fatigue can show up in the person that's doing the interviewing, and how important it is to have self-care and care for ourselves while we are opening ourselves up to listening and taking in those stories to share with larger audiences.
Yeah, compassion fatigue. That's something I didn't know existed and something that I've ended up having over the years. Can you talk a little bit more about that, what it is and how you specifically combated it?
Yeah, for me, when I think about my career, I've went from a multitude of levels of working with veterans and service members with trauma, all the way to the space of suicide prevention and everything in between. And hearing those stories for so long, right? I started feeling that burnout. It ebbed and it flowed, where it was moments of burnout and that compassion fatigue, because it's like, and I'm going to make this unethical for a moment. Sometimes you just want to take that person, wrap them in your arms really tight and just hug them and love them and tell them that they're going to be okay and bring them home and put them in a bubble. But realistically, we can't do that. And there were moments where I really got tired. My soul was just really weary from the work. And I had to find an outlet. And what became an outlet for me was the arts. What started out for me in the arts was having an art table. So on the other side of my office, I have an art space. And it was spending intentional time painting and drawing and writing and doing pieces of art with wood. That became the place where my anxiety lowered. That became the place where I was able to detach from my work, to renew, to restore what I wanted to feel and how I wanted to show up. Also for me, taking time away, right? Like I will take a vacation. I will take a break when I know I need it. Because if I don't, I'm not doing anyone any good. I'm not serving to the best of my capacity. And I'm no good for my family, right? Like my family didn't sign up for the tasks that are my life, right? So I always want to make sure I show up. Sometimes it means going out for a walk. Every morning I watch the sunrise because I have to remember that there's a mission, there's a purpose. The work that has chosen me, because I don't believe I chose it, needs me to stay well in order to continue to do it.
I know. So in 2021, and as I jokingly kid around with you, you became Dr. Qwynn Medicine Woman.
Yeah.
And you earned your PhD from Walden University. And you became a doctor of philosophy in industrial and organization psychology.
Yeah.
So, wow. So what drew you into getting your doctorate, especially in that field?
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about, that was 6 years of your life. They talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah. So when I came home from active duty, I came home, I was a single mom. I didn't have a job lined up, and I was in search of employment. And I'll never forget the very first interview that I went on. I was in Buckhead. I'm not going to say where I was, but I'm just going to say I was in Buckhead. Now imagine this soldier who just came from Fort Bragg, who was working in a World War II barrack for the time that they were there, goes to Buckhead for an interview for finance. I walk in, Lloyd, people are riding around on Razor scooters, there are popcorn machines. I'm looking around like, what is this? Is this Disney? What is this? I'm thinking, because I was finance in the military, there would be, some similarity. And I'll never forget sitting in that interview, and it was a panel of interviewers. And quite honestly, they didn't know what to say to me, and I didn't know what to say to them. And I will never forget, my parents took my daughter to Disney, speaking of, that week, right? My daughter was maybe like 2, maybe 1 or 2 at the time. And I chose to stay behind for this interview. And I remember getting to my car because I knew I bombed that interview. I was not prepared. My resume was crap. Let's just say it, right? It did not translate the way it needed to translate in terms of hard skills and soft skills that I acquired from the military and how I was going to translate those skills into the civilian workforce. I got into my car and I cried. I was a Black woman who was a veteran, who felt so invisible that I did not know what to do. And so I went back to what I knew best. I started working for the military again, right? And I'm grateful because that's been my trajectory. But I remember sitting in my car and the soldier in me came out after crying for about a good 10 minutes, snot and everything all over the place. And I said, I don't know how and I don't know when, but I'm going to make an impact as it relates to women veterans in the civilian workforce at some point in his life.
Yeah. Amen. And you have.
And so I went back to school for my PhD, and my dissertation was actually focused on post 9/11 women veterans transition from the military into the civilian workforce.
Wow. You got to share that with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the transition space, and hey, look, a transition is hard, whether you're transitioning after 4 years of service or 40 years of service.
It's hard.
It's extremely difficult. And it's always the great equalizer too. Because like, look, you can be like an average troop that gets out after 4 years, that you're an E3, and you can succeed, like, right? And you can be a full bird colonel that's getting out after 30 years and bomb those interviews.
Yep.
So the transition from the military to civilian world becomes the great equalizer. And there are a lot of things to figure out. You were like me. So I retired in 2007. There simply wasn't the support that there is now. For me, really, I had a GI Jobs magazine. Yeah, that was my support. I would read that thing cover to cover. And now, holy cow, there's so much support. Here in Georgia, you got Work for Warriors. Across the country, you have Hire Heroes USA and 4Block and Hire Heroes Foundation and the American Corporate Partners. So there's a lot of organizations that help veterans figure it out. But at the time we transitioned, we were pretty much on our own. Yeah, we had the TAP program, which is still average at best, but back then it was really poor.
It's come a long way, I mean, back then you just wanted to go home, right? Like you just wanted them to check that box, sign it, because that's one step closer to me going home. Speaking for myself, that's all that I was thinking of, was I wanted to go home, not thinking about, okay, when I go home, I'm not in this uniform anymore. I don't have the supports that I had when I was stationed at Fort Bragg. I'm back in my community where I'm just going to blend in, even though I have these experiences and this expertise, so to speak. No one's going to know that unless I share it. And honestly, coming home and having that experience and a few other experiences, I didn't share that I was a veteran.
Yeah. Wow. That breaks my heart. Yeah. For several reasons, we should always be proud of our military service.
Yeah.
And then as somebody who works in the veteran talent acquisition space, I can tell you, we look for veterans. So
right.
we look for veterans, not only because it's the right thing to do and we're patriotic and we have all that going on, but veterans strongly feel they give us a competitive advantage, right? Our veteran workforce as a whole is going to come and knock it out. And then they have all this training and then real life experience, all these amazing things that we look for, right? And yeah, sometimes we struggle with the transition, getting a good resume, translating our experience. We have to learn what a profit and loss is if you come work in corporate America. Yeah. I mean, there are some very specific things you have to learn about your industry. Yeah. But for the most part, man, veterans are killing it. They're leading and they're managing and so never be ashamed of your veteran experience, your military experience, and understand what a competitive advantage it brings to you. Yeah, you're going to have to do some additional things. If you want to go work in corporate America, you're going to likely have to get a degree. You have to gain some additional skill sets. But as a whole, corporate America is we value you and we want you.
Yeah. And to your audience, I want your audience members to hear that so loud and clear. Take it from someone who didn't identify when she came home. Please do, because there's a service member that's getting ready to come up the ranks that may have similar attributes to you. We need you to be that voice, right? Raise that platform to say, I served. It's so important that we're able to tell our former selves, tell those troops that are behind us, it's okay to say that you served. Actually, it's pretty critical to tell folks that you served.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, then you took a big step in 2021. You started your own business and you're the CEO In Their Honor LLC. So this is one of the things that really, I think I'm just so impressed and so honored to know you for what you do in this business. So can you cover it with our listeners and viewers?
Sure. So as I was writing my dissertation, focusing on qualitative studies, right? Once again, I'm a story collector. I love stories. I love spurting out themes in stories. But I had a mentor by the name of Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas. And Kate was can I use one colorful word? Kate was a badass Marine. And Kate was a researcher. And Kate's work was centered around, one of Kate's major pieces of work was centered around women veterans. And so Kate decided to be a mentor for me while I was working on my dissertation. Kate was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And during the journey of me writing my dissertation, I began to see Kate's health decline. And our conversations started changing from research, doctoral candidacy, to existential conversations. Kate knew that she was dying. And I will never forget, we started having conversations, and mind you, this was during the pandemic. And I had a question. I asked her, how does military experience resurface at the end of life? And boy, that was such a rich conversation where she shared about her time deployed and burn pits. And if, your listeners are listening, you can find Kate's story, almost Google it, and you'll find Kate's story. But I remember it just took me, it took hold of me in a way that said, I wonder if there's something I can do about that. So what I didn't share was after I transitioned from active duty, I contemplated for a few minutes going to school for mortuary science. So I've always had this interest in death and dying from the time I was a little girl, right? It's just been something with me. And I remember doing an apprenticeship at a funeral home, and I did it for a summer. And then I said, okay, I didn't have the support that I kind of needed at the time, because you start talking about death and dying and people really shut down. They really don't want to hear about your experiences in a hearse, right? They don't want to. But that it stayed with me. And so I had a colleague say to me, hey, Qwynn, have you ever heard of a death doula? And I'm like, what the heck is a death doula? And I looked it up, Lloyd. And when I looked it up, in short, it's a companion, right? It's someone that journeys alongside of someone that has a serious illness or terminal illness, their family, their loved ones, through that end of life continuum. And it was almost like there was a picture of me, right? If there was a picture, the picture would have been my face that I saw. And I jumped into it, right? I told Kate, I want to become a death doula. And I will never forget one of our last conversations. Kate said to me, I need you to change, to shift the way veterans receive care at the end of life. And that was heavy, because I'm like, what am I supposed to do, right? I don't know how to do that. So what started out, In Their Honor, started out as a passion project in Gwinnett County, where I wanted to support veterans that were at the end of life in hospice. I would have never thought, it's been about 4 years, that the work that I started in 2021 is shifting globally, where countries are reaching out to say, we want to do a better job in providing dignity, support, and care to our veterans. And I don't care what part of the world you're in, there are warriors all over the world that deserve to be seen, heard, honored, and supported.
Qwynn, that is such a big deal, because the other countries simply don't take care of their veterans like we do in the United States. Yeah. Look, we have issues with veteran service in the U.S. So there's no doubt about it. Yeah. But the United States recognizes veterans. We provide so much support through the government support, through nonprofit support, through individual contributor support, 1,000,000 times than most countries. So the fact that these other countries are reaching out with interest, that is huge, Qwynn. That is a huge impact. So kudos to you on that.
I appreciate that. I tell people there are days where, Lloyd, I sit and I'm like, I'm going to bring my faith into this. I'm just a vessel. I'm just a vessel. I was simply minding my mission. And to get messages from the UK and Canada to say, can we do something together to take on an international role to support doulas who are caring for veterans, that blows my mind, because all I wanted to do was, in Gwinnett County, right?
Man.
Support veterans in my city, in my county, in my state. And it has taken off and grown in ways that I could have never imagined.
So absolutely amazing. And thank you for what you do in that role. And then I got to ask, so you do all these amazing things, like, right? And then in 2024, I have no idea already time for this, but you become Senior VP of Engagement and Transformation at a company I admire, PsychArmor. So can you talk a little bit about that role and actually what PsychArmor does?
Yeah, so PsychArmor is a national nonprofit where we train. Our goal is to transform the way our society sees our military connected communities through training, right? Whether it's virtual or in person, we cover the gambit. If you go to the PsychArmor platform, you'll see we're over 250 courses, like micro courses that you can take for absolutely free 99.
My favorite F word. Free. So
Free, right? One of our our flagship course is 15 Things Veterans Want You to Know. Most corporate companies, that's kind of like their go-to when it comes to how do we get our employees to learn a little bit more about veterans, right? They use that in the corporate America. They use that in academia. They use it in healthcare, right? They use it in hospice and palliative care. The minute I say PsychArmor and then the minute I say 15 Things Veterans Want You to Know, the light bulbs go off, right? And it feels so good because it's so great to know that a course like that has shifted the paradigm in the ways that people become competent about military culture, right? Competent, bringing that sense of cultural sensitivity, bringing that sense of cultural humility to the stage to say, okay, if we have a veteran that's in our workplace, how do we show up for them, right? How do we acknowledge their service? How do we get an affinity group or ERG started that they can feel that belonging, that connection? How do we just show up? And I love that PsychArmor is providing this platform to let our bigger community find ways to do that. But I got into PsychArmor, actually, the CEO of PsychArmor and I were great colleagues, good friends. And when Kate died, I reached out to her and I asked her, I wanted to know what communities were doing to support veterans through the end of life. I didn't want her to tell me what the VA was doing. I didn't want her to tell me what healthcare organizations were doing. I wanted to know if every time a civilian saw a veteran and you can utter the words, thank you for your service, what were you doing to thank them for their service? And I'll never forget, if you ever meet Dr. Tina Atherall, she's the most soft-spoken, warmest person on the face of the earth. And she looked at me and she said, what are you going to do? She threw it right back at me. Shortly after, we were able to receive an angel donor, and they funded us to do a project called Caring for Veterans Through the End of Life. And it's a collection of courses for communities, healthcare providers, and caregivers on how to care for veterans through the end of life. So that was kind of like my first take at PsychArmor, right? I was the lead advisor on that project. Then I became PsychArmor's creative advisor on all of their work, especially their equity portfolio, their equity portfolio and their aging and longevity portfolio and caregivers. And then a little bit over a year ago, Tina said, hey, would you be willing to come on? We really want to make sure innovation and storytelling, and we're engaging our audiences because we know that if we don't keep telling these stories, we don't want our military community to be an afterthought. So I came on, and everything that I do comes from the lens of heart-centered work. How can we bring our audience members here? It's so important to have them here, but how do we bring them here? How do we transform the way society sees our military-connected communities? And that's the work I get to do on a daily basis alongside PsychArmor. And it's no day is the same, right? Like I just went to Seattle, Washington to film some courses on minority veterans. I've done work with AIAN, LGBTQ. You fill in the blank at PsychArmor. I've been able to shape some of those portfolios of work, and it's an honor to do that.
Wow. And, storytelling, you're great at storytelling. So you're, whenever I've seen you speak, it's always amazing. But didn't you take some drama lessons? Yeah. Did you take some drama lessons?
I wish I could say that. Here's the thing. No, not really. I did not stumble across it. Here's what's really interesting. My church that I attend, Evangel Community Church in Snellville, Georgia, had asked me would I play Mary for Good Friday, I think 2 years ago, in a monologue. And I said, I don't know anything about monologues or acting or performing. Like, I'm academic. Like, no, I cannot do that. But I said, let me pray about it. Let me think about it. Long story short, Lloyd, I didn't know that I could write monologues, and I did not know that I could perform. And I did it, and I wanted to do it again and again and again, and I have. And it allows me, when people say, Qwynn, you work in the death and dying space, isn't that like sad and depressing and all the things? And I'm like, there are moments, but when I'm able to sit in production and I'm able to sit in theater and bring lived experiences to life in a way that educates my audience, it gives me life. All pun intended. It gives me life. I love being able to produce stories and do it through theater, applied theater at that.
Neat. So neat. So you have so much going on, you got more roles than the poke is what I always say. You kind of say about myself, and that goes for you as well. And then in 2025, our intersections cross. You become a presidential scholar at the George Bush Institute in their Stay in the Veteran Leadership Program. Wow. So talk a little bit about your journey to becoming a presidential scholar.
It took 3 applications that I didn't press send on.
Wow, you did not press send. So it took me 4 applications hitting send. It took me 4 years to get into. Why in the world would you fill out an application and not hit send?
I didn't think I was good enough.
Oh, my goodness.
But I want you to sit with that for a moment.
Yeah.
And I want to sit with that for a moment because I'm hoping that there are some folks who are still thinking about applying because we have about less than a month. Just do it. Whether it takes you 1 or 4 times, you are enough. Do it. Do it. And if you don't get in, try it again, right? Lloyd, I remember, here's the thing. You're the first person I met in person. Let's go back, right? We sent each other pictures of ourselves, right? Like, hey, this is what I look like today. The first people to, like, you and I met first. And I remember sitting in that space at the Institute that first day with such imposter syndrome. Why am I here? Yeah. And to only realize that there were many people in the room with us that felt that same way. But what I realized after this whole amazing 5 months, 6 months, in spaces like that, we were allowed to germinate and to grow alongside other leaders, to continue to do the work that we've been destined and purposed to do. And I think back, and I cannot believe it's been a month. It's almost been a month. Well, it's been a month since we've met all together. And just how every month we got together, we were picking up tricks of the trade on how to be better leaders from leaders, right? Like, not just the leaders that we saw on the stage, but from each other. And that was such a gift. We were able to sit together and say, this is hard. There were some significant moments in history, right? And the current affairs that happened within those 5 months, right? Like shut down. All these things happened.
Yeah, the shutdown and Charlie Kirk's murder. And oh my goodness.
There was just so much, right? So much political. There was this, there was that. But what we were able to do was we all rallied around each other, different races, genders, beliefs, political affiliations, you name it. We all came together around a common good.
Yeah.
And we were able to show, really, the researcher in me would love to spend this time at the Bush Institute with this level of research, how this is a model to save our world.
Yeah, absolutely. There's big elements of it for sure that can do that. The connections they make, like right from the beginning, we all talk about that. You got some secret sauce. Maybe it's that they kept the classroom at 62 degrees.
To keep us awake.
We had to huddle up and figure things out. But the connections, and honestly, I think the best value of the class was not the speakers on stage. They were great. They were motivational. They parts of the curriculum gave us some new tools, but it was each other. It was each other. I'm going to repeat what you said. We learned so much from each other, tricks of the trades and connections and how to do this. And I loved it. It gave me confidence because I figured most people needed me to be a mentor in that class. And so I was able to really help mold some people. And then, man, I met so many amazing new connections. Yeah. Dr. Qwynn, medicine woman, and Lydia, foreign-born spouse, and our Victoria, who did this incredible documentary that was on season 1 of Tango Tango, and one of my new best friends, Mark Riley, who leads the Washington Tattoo and does this amazing thing with music. And we were in the same space together, but for the most part, our lives were not going to intersect. And because our lives intersected through this incredible program, it's a force multiplier. And not only a force multiplier in the veteran space, but as you mentioned, a force multiplier in fixing some of the ills that the world and the United States has.
Without a doubt, I truly, when you're able to bring people together to do good, when you take some of those layers off and we're just thinking about humanity, so much can shift. I sit and I still feel that, right? Like there were moments where we talked about pluralism and democracy and we had opposing views, right? Across the room, but we all came back together and was able to hug each other, love on each other, and get back to the work without tearing the fabrics of who we are down.
Yeah. Let's talk about some humanity and some of our bonding. And I'm going to take it back to Module 4. We had the opportunity to go spend Module 4 in Washington, D.C. And you and I and 2 other classmates had this incredible opportunity to lay the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington. But I want to even go back before that. You had the opportunity to visit your mentor that you talked about and go pay respect. Can you walk us through that if you don't mind? Because it just showed the humanity of the class, and not only your story, but there was unfortunately several of our classmates, visited their fallen, the troops. And then we had a classmate that ran into one of their former soldiers during the changing of the guard. So take us back to that moment, and then I'll kind of cover, how special it was for me as well.
Yeah. It was shared that I wanted to go visit Kate. And before I knew it, I had people saying, hey, do you need a battle buddy to come with you? My intention was to go by myself, right? And have a minute and go by myself. But I didn't realize how much I needed companions. The work I do, I companion people all the time, and didn't realize that in that moment, I needed a companion. And I'll never forget Jason. We're at the columbarium, and Jason says, I have a towel for you. If you want to sit on the towel, I brought a towel for you. That intentional thought of having a few of our family come with me and hold that space, let me cry, let me tell them who Kate was in my words. I'll never forget that moment. To the point where I promise you, I took a bracelet off and I placed it on the edge. And as I got up, my phone rings. I pick up the phone and, oh my gosh, I think it was Heather. And she says, they need you to come back because they want you to be one of the people that lay the wreath. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, what is going on, right? But I remember, let me back that up again, putting that bracelet there, putting my hand on the stone and saying, thank you. Because the day prior, I remember Todd Connors said something about, who do we need to thank? And I needed to thank Kate. And as soon as that happened, I get the call. And we're pretty much running back to front of Arlington to get there. And I'll never forget, I'm flustered, I'm red, and I'm just like, okay, God, okay, this is an honor of a lifetime. And to do it with y'all. Knowing that each one of us represented a different part of history, her story, our nation's story. It almost took me out, right? Like the feeling that I felt was one where my ancestors dreamed of that moment. And there was a subtle breeze that happened when we were up there. And it was just this moment of serene peace that I'll never forget. And I remember we marched back up and we all hugged. And there's a picture of us hugging. It's one of my favorite
It's my favorite picture. Yeah, mine too, of all the thousands of pictures.
That picture was just so emotionally heavy in a good way. And a moment I will never forget. It
again, we all four of us were moved for very different reasons. I remember standing up there, getting ready to march down, going, oh my gosh, don't fall down the steps, don't fall down the steps. So that's the fourth step. You're going, what leg do I start off with? I've been retired for 19 years. And if you look at the videos, like I totally don't remember how to march downstairs, but then I get to it, and then the breeze, and then taking in the moments. For me, I was first hit on the heaviness of the moment, like why we are there in Arlington, which I've been to Arlington probably 3 dozen times, and I've seen the changing of the guard, but it was so different. And then as I shared in class, because class allowed you to be vulnerable. And then one of my favorite classmates, kind of hooked me up. She goes, tell the story why you were emotional. So I was emotional for another reason. So my late wife and I had visited one of our first vacations we did as newlyweds. So we went to Washington, D.C., and we went to Arlington. And Qwynn, I flash back like it happened yesterday. And remember that. And wow, it was emotional, but joyous. And then, then I came off the stage, literally off the stage, and was able to share the moment with with you guys. And then wow. And then, I got to do something really cool. Like 2 days later, I got to take my mom to Arlington National Cemetery. It's been on her bucket list forever. And then, 2 days after that, I got to take, my new bride, Sarah, to Arlington for the first time. So all of that was facilitated by this absolutely wonderful program with amazing human beings in that class. And the humanitarian part of it all was just so deep and heavy and wonderful and joyous, and absolutely amazing program.
Absolutely. I remember that day, and I remember coming and sitting at your feet.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of you and so proud of everyone in that room that was able to let grief and love show up.
Yeah. So thank you, Catherine Torres Permal, for calling me out and sharing my story. So, and thank you, Qwynn, for being there for me in a big way.
But what that does too, I believe in ripple effects, right? Yes, your life continues to grow and move forward, but you share the legacy of your late wife in such a way that allows her to live on in some, right? Like, it's so beautiful. I love Anne, right? I loved Anne, and it's beautiful. And I think that so many people in that room were able to tap into different areas of their own grief. Because grief is love, right? You love someone. To be able to say, I can sit with someone in their grief. I don't have to fix it, but I could be with them, be present, let them share that story, let them feel that moment, and let them know they're not alone. That's humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. And wow, you are a humanitarian, my friend. So thank you for being you. You're totally awesome. So
thank you, friend. You too.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you
for telling me your story. As my friend Chris Peck says, the best is yet to come. And man, I'm looking forward to not only wonderful collaboration with you going forward, but just the friendship that we started and growing in our friendship and growing in our walks of faith. And so, hey, if people want to contact you, Qwynn, to learn about the duel and to learn about PsychArmor, how do they reach out?
So you can find me, you can go to my website, which is intheirhonor.info, or you can go to psycharmor.org and you can find all our stuff there. You can find me on either platform. If you are on LinkedIn, you look up Qwynn Galloway-Salazar. There's only one. I promise it's going to be me. I'm really easy to find. I have a very unique name. Reach out. If there's a question you have, if you want to collaborate, if you want to brainstorm, if you say, hey, Qwynn, I want to have these deeper conversations about end of life and I don't know where to start, hey, just reach out. And if you can't get me, Lloyd knows how to get me. It would be my pleasure to walk alongside of you and your community in caring for veterans through the end of life.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Qwynn.
Thank you.
Wishing all my listeners and viewers an amazing and happy and healthy 2026. And as always, be safe, be kind, and be remarkable.
The Tango Tango podcast is proudly sponsored by Supply Chain Now. Join the Tango Tango community for more inspiring stories. Follow us on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to the Tango Tango YouTube channel and follow and listen to Tango Tango wherever you get your podcasts.